Hey YouTubers, Ronan here with my bar channel. What I'm going to be doing today is show you how I build this beehive nook out of scrap plywood that I had laying around. Hey YouTubers, it's Ronan here with my bar channel where I'm either building it, assembling it, repairing it, or just replacing it. What I'm going to be working on today is building a modified version of the D-Coat nook. Um, if you see in the plans, I took the plans, it calls for ½ inch of plywood. And what I did was I went through and looked at what I had available so I didn't have to buy any material. I had 1/3 inch plywood. So what I did was I laid out on the measurement that it calls for and start building it based on the specs that you see in the beginning of uh, the video, and start cutting my sides. So as I'm measuring and I'm cutting as I'm going, I'm just making sure things just lined up. Once it lines up, you'll see me just taking measurements, um, and making the side pieces match and stuff like that. Getting pieces of wood and just drawing, cutting as I'm going. Nothing really planned out. I'm just kind of winging it based on the material I had. So you'll see as I'm cutting my material, um, you know, I get everything lined up and get ready to build this nook. So once I got the pieces cut, I had me some wood glue and I start gluing the pieces together. Once I got all the gluing done on the side, I put the pieces together. I had some clamps to square it off, and these clamps will keep it perfectly square while the glue sets. And after the glue set, I went and got my pneumatic stapler. So I just put a couple of staples in the edges. Then I test the frames to see the fit. Make sure the frames are fitting properly and there's not too much space. It's just enough space in for the frames. I left about, I believe it's like about 4 or 5 inches at the bottom of the frame, so there's some depth in there. After I checked my spacing, I just went ahead and started just gluing the bottom in. I used that wood glue when I spread it all around the base of the bottom. It was a little bit hard to get out, but I spread the wood glue around the bottom. Then I set the bottom in, squared off. Once it's squared off, remember everything was pre-measured and cut. I hit it with the pneumatic stapler, a couple of spots, and then I'm just gonna let it sit and cure. Once the glue it's dried, I can continue working on the rest of it. Now you can see me there wiping off the excess glue, and I take the glue and I pass it around on the inside, trying to seal the inside edges, going all the corners, top, right, left, bottom, all the corners. I pass that with glue for a good, tight, secure seal. After the glue is cured, I had to build a kind of a handle and also an extra support for the side of the frames itself, because what happened is that I went off because I didn't take into consideration that I was using a less thick plywood than the specs recommended. So my dimensions went off. The frames were a little bit loose, so I had to cut back some and readjust for the 1/3 inch plywood. So to compensate, I just put that little handle there, that I kind of glued into place, and I countersink and pre-drill some holes, so that way I can put some screws on there and keep that handle to use. One more reason for the handle was that, or that piece of wood that I double as a handle, was because I used the thinner plywood. The frames themselves, the edge of the frame was sticking out. So when I went to put the cover on, I had some issues with the cover. So I had to build up the space to take up the spacing for support of the frame, and so the cover can fit properly. Because remember, I used the exact measurement that the plan called for. I didn't modify or adjust anything. Because I did that, now there's a gap between the four corners you see right there. What I did was I cut some pieces of plywood, and I'm gluing like four corners in place. Once it's glued in place, I'm just gonna go ahead and cut them off once the glue sets. So there's some takeaways that I learned from this build, because you cannot build to specs if you're gonna use different thickness of material. You have to adjust for the thickness of material, and that's what I didn't do. So I had four gaps in in those corners right there. Now here's the cover that I built for the top of the nook. So I just built it to specs, glued everything in, and have it ready. This was no big deal. Some pneumatic staple and stuff, and that was it. Now this is how the finished project looked after the raw material. I just need to cut those four posts off, but that's how it looked with the handle and everything else and the frames inside. After I've done, I painted it. So after it was done, I went ahead and I drilled a little hole there, right, for the bees to get in and out, and I put that little cover that I bought on I think it was eBay. So you can rotate it, block them in, put a nail inside like they recommend of the entry hole. I put a little ledge right there, so you know the bee has somewhere to land on it and go in. Those are vents that I put in there, and in the vents I have little meshes, so you know there's ventilation in that nook. I went ahead and got some primer. I primed it and got some camouflage paint, and I just sprayed it over. What I did was to do the top. I got cut a tree branch, and I kind of sprayed the green first, and then sprayed the brown over. Hold the tree branch over it, and then sprayed the brown, so it came out like a camouflage look. So this is my build for the D-Coats 5-frame Nuke. It's kind of modified version of it. The entries on the front with the ledge versus the side, and using a different thickness plywood. Like, share, and subscribe to my channel. See future videos. I have the flow hive that I'm working on.